because some people watching this potentially don't realise, but queer experiences are a huge part of the neurodivergent community. And I wondered if either of you might have thoughts on perhaps why there are so many queer people and gender non-conforming people in the autistic and neurodivergent communities.
How deep do we go with this?
We've got time.
Are we at a hold my beer intersection? I mean, there is the obvious, isn't there? There's the obvious that obviously social norms don't actually make any sense to us, really. And it just doesn't. And then there's the kind of double empathy swing as well, because we're not surrounded by openly autistic and authentically autistic unmasked people. So I think from a double empathy perspective, I think what can be really attractive to us in terms of who we might be romantically attracted to or aromantic or whatever, or even connect with, is very few and far between. So that really kind of narrows down your pool, doesn't it, a little bit? So on the one hand, we've got, and this is just kind of my hypothesis, but on the one hand, we've got like, you know, social norms that don't actually make any sense. But on the other hand, we've got a lot of people, we spend a lot of time being awfully lonely and misunderstood because we're not surrounded by people that are either unmasked or openly neurodivergent growing up. And when we come into that kind of like time in our lives, really. So I think that connection also has a lot to do with it as well. And connection, again, is something because we don't feel very safe in the world, that to build trust, we need that relational safety. And we can only really have that with somebody that we're connected to, because actually we can't feel an attraction to somebody that we're not really connected to, if that makes sense. So it goes really deep. And I think, you know, my big thing at the minute is interoception. And I think there's a lot to be said for interoceptive, because we, you know, a lot of us have disorganized interoception as well. So a lot of us don't actually differentiate between platonic love and romantic love, or may not experience romantic love, or may only experience. And it's really bizarre because I think it's only the English language that has only one word for love. But I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. And there's so many different ways that we could go with it in terms of interoception, alexithymia, in terms of not being surrounded by people that we connect to, in terms of double empathy, and then there's the social norm thing on top as well. And then we can get into neuroqueering, but that's just going to be a whole later discussion.
Yeah.
But that's my thoughts on it, rounded up in a succinct way.
Charlie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and linking on from there as well, the interoception, I'll come back to that. But I think it's really, for me, closely intertwined with the undiagnosed autistic experience. I went through life thinking that other people experience the world similar to me, I think, and they likewise. So when I was at school, I just thought everyone found male and female forms equally attractive, and it was only really later on that I realised that mainly girls were getting boyfriends, and I wasn't seeing queer friendship. I had no word for it then, but I didn't know anything other than heteronormative standards really at school. But I did notice, as I got a bit older and noticed cues from my body that I was attracted to people, that I was getting them regardless of gender. And so that's where I think interoception comes into it. If you get a stirring in the loins, so to speak, because you're watching Winona Ryder in Bram Stoker's Dracula, then you think maybe I'm not like everybody else. And yeah, just like with the autistic experience, could be we go through a lot of life with a lot of social issues or a lot of sensory issues in particular, and we don't realize that it's not uncomfortable for everybody, and that our experience isn't the norm. In terms of societal norms, yeah, I mean, I always liked to think that I was a bit of a rebel and that I wasn't just a sheep and going with the crowd. And it kind of felt daring and different and just not Joe Normal to be attracted to anybody I like. And I kind of thought it was edgy and daring when I was in my teens, but then some of the bullies that bullied me for being allegedly square, they bullied me for that instead. So yeah, just blundering through life, being autistic and oblivious, being bi or pan and assuming everyone was when there wasn't. And yeah, it's all wrapped up in the same thing to me.